Part 2 is about why or why not entrepreneurship in education. Just like entrepreneurship in education is divided into wide and narrow definitions and approaches, we see the same thing about the reasons for working with entrepreneurial education. The most common focus is the narrow approach and definition. It's very common as a stated effect. The wide approaches are quite rare when you see the stated effects. And also the evidence base is also much stronger on the narrow approach than on the wide approach. And the narrow approach effects are often stated by policymakers and researchers, whereas teachers are more interested in the effects coming from the wide definition. When we look more into detail around effects stated from entrepreneurial education, we find some main categories. We find job creation, economic success, globalization, innovation and renewal, requiring new skills and abilities for people in such a world. Some more rarely stated reasons for entrepreneurial education, but pretty promising for schools and education more in general, are the joy, engagement and creativity that can come from working with entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial processes, and societal challenges where people actually can make a difference to society by using entrepreneurial methods. In the educational system, it is not so easy to work with goals that are good for society or organizations. The main focus is often on the individual. And also, job creation and economic success are often not so central in the educational systems of today. How should we go about to create learning today? So many times we have to take away a lot of the different reasons for working with entrepreneurship in education in order to get the attention of teachers out there in the practice of education. So we have a couple of effects remaining, that we need a different skill set in the world we live in today, that it is a source of joy and engagement to work with entrepreneurship in education, and that it can be a way to tackle societal challenges for the students of today. And we can go even more narrow to say that creating creativity and engagement could be one of the most, or even the most important effects from entrepreneurial education that you could have today. If you ask me, that's what I would say. Because teachers, they don't look at what is good for society long term necessarily. They look at what is good for student learning today. So why is this? And how can it be, how can joy and engagement be important in schools? Are we just there to have fun? Well, it's not that simple. In quite recent research on education, people have been starting to talk about what is called non-cognitive factors, which is the very similar to the entrepreneurial competencies. And what has been seen is that the mindset that people have in schools impact the level of perseverance and the energy they put into the schools or universities. And it also impacts learning strategies. And this impacts behaviors. If you go to class, if you do your homework, if you organize materials, if you participate or study. So this has an impact on the grades that people get in schools. So the non-cognitive factors, such as enjoying what you're doing, does this work have value for me? And also feeling self-confidence. Can I succeed at this? Does my ability and competence grow with my effort? And do I feel that I belong in this community? They have an impact on the cognitive aspects of grades and what is measured in traditional tests. So, and if we take some common entrepreneurial competencies, such as perseverance, passion, self-insight, uncertainty and ambiguity tolerance, and so on, they have a lot of effects on the left side of this, but indirectly that also impacts the grades. And this can be increased through joy, engagement, and creativity to increase the motivation of students. So these are some reasons that are not so common, but promising for the future of education. But if this is so good, why are we not working this way so much in education today? Well, some explanations can be found in a divide between traditional and what is often called progressive education. The rigid traditional educational approaches are put against the progressive but vague educational approaches on the right-hand side here. Theory is put against practice, predictability is put against unpredictability, scientific methods are put against entrepreneurial methods, thought is put against action and emotion, and so on. And perhaps the most important difference is down here. The left side is easy to measure, whereas the right side is very difficult to measure. And this is a divide that has been here in society for thousands of years. It starts in the battle between positivism and interpretivism, which is basically on a philosophical level. It goes through the educational domain, it goes through the entrepreneurial education domain, and all the way to the entrepreneurial method being put against the scientific method. So we have some serious problems in the educational domain. And a common way to solve this is to say that everybody on this side should go over to this side. But that will never happen. So I think we have to do other things than that. On the left side of this, we often find politicians and, for example, global testing and assessment of educational systems, such as the OECD PISA. There are others as well. On the right-hand side, we often find teachers and researchers protesting and not liking this situation. Here are some quotes that are examples of this. On the left-hand side, the measurement researchers and others are stating that we need a rigorous experiments, evaluating programs and practices. And that PISA could enrich education because it encourages countries to look at ideas from around the world. On the right-hand side, we have the absolute majority of the research community, such as Biesta, who says that the danger here is that we end up valuing what is measured rather than that we engage in measurement of what we value. I will come back to this. There is also a lot of criticism against the measurement approaches, such as PISA, but all others as well. What about engaging in measurement of what we value? Maybe that is a way forward here in this domain. I would actually say that if teachers value the wide definition of entrepreneurship and effects such as motivation, engagement, and joy and creativity, because it can foster learning, that is what we have to be able to measure, because we humans, we do what can be measured. If we cannot measure it, it will not be as much focus on that. So basically, measuring, if we value creativity, action orientation, self-efficacy, and so on, we need to be able to measure these unmeasurable qualities. And perhaps most tests of today do not measure that kind of competencies, but that is the way forward in order to be able to cross over this abyss between rigidity and vagueness, which is plaguing education so much. Okay, that was part 2 of this mini lecture series. In the next part, we will look at when to do what when we are talking about entrepreneurship in education. Hope to see you there too. Bye bye.